Hi friends, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for being here. Today's project, I am making a beaded chain bracelet, but I'm going to put a little spin on it, a very simple spin, by adding some beautiful chain as well, making this a double strand bracelet. And I really love the way that this has like a modern spin to it, but it's also very lightweight and can kind of be worn with anything, really. It's almost an everyday piece. If you are new to using the one-step looper or a beginning beater making simple loops and you still don't have that down, this is a great project for you. I consider a fundamental technique in jewelry making, in my opinion, making simple loops and wire wrap loops. So this would be a great project for you beginners that are not so familiar or have your technique down with making simple loops, because you'll make a lot of them. You'll make a lot of them, and it's really, really easy. And using something like the one-step looper is a really great tool to have in your arsenal, because you can kind of go assembly line, is just how I do it. Also, this gives you consistent loops every time. So one-step looper, I'm using the 1.5 millimeter today. You can also use your round nose pliers, of course, to make your simple loops. Either way, you can get to the same result. The other thing I'll be using today is a pair of chain nose pliers. I'll need actually a couple pair of chain nose pliers. And I'm also going to be using my cutter tool. And then, of course, our wire. So let's start right there before we jump in. The craft wire that I would recommend for a beaded chain, whether you're going to do a bracelet, earrings, necklace, what have you, beaded chain, what I would recommend, in my opinion, for your gauge wire is going to be 20 gauge. 20 gauge dead soft craft wire. I am using a silver color. It is a copper core, but it is dead soft and it is tarnish resistant. As well as my chain is stainless steel. All of my closures are stainless steel, my jump ring and my lobster. So this will wear and wear for years to come without tarnishing. So a nice tarnish resistant wire. Now the reason that I recommend, I'm going to pull you in a little, the 20 gauge wire as opposed to 22. Now you can use 22 gauge wire, but here is a tip for you. When you are doing beaded chain, you want your loops to stand the test of time. And the way that you can tell the gauge of wire is good is when you pull it, right? When you connect all your beads here, all your components, and you're pulling and tugging, such as I am right now, and your loops are not coming apart, that's when you know you're good. So I find, in my experience, 20 gauge craft wire to be a good wire making simple loops. Now if I did wire wrapped, I would absolutely go 22 gauge. You can also go 18 gauge, but what you do not want is you don't want to tug on your loops, your components, and then have those loops come apart. And oftentimes the 22 gauge is a little too soft and you might find your loops coming apart. The other thing that I'm doing here to make it really, really super simple is I'm connecting all of my components together, as you can see. I am eliminating jump rings. Now you can absolutely put jump rings in between every single component, and that'll give you length. So you would use, if you're using jump rings, you would use less beads. So a nice couple of tips and tricks for you there. Obviously, you'll have fluidity and movement with the beaded chain, whether you are connecting them just like this or putting jump rings in. Either way, you'll have a lot of lovely fluidity and movement in your piece. In this case, I am not using any jump rings. I'm just going to connect all of my components together, so I'm using more beads. With regards to your beads, you can use, of course, any beads you like for a beaded chain. I'm using some 6 millimeter howlite, 6 and 8 millimeter rondelles, and 20 gauge dead soft wire in a tarnish resistant silver. The chain I'm using today is a Venetian box chain. It's a very lightweight chain. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite chains. And I just so happen to have a lobster that is a square that matches back to my chain. And that's what I love about this modern spin, right? Because we've got the circles and we've got the rectangles, and I just think it really adds dimension and it's going to make for a beautiful piece. I'm also using a couple of 8mm jump rings today. Beads left. So when we're using the one-step looper, what I like to do is I will go right in between where the jaws are there. We're going to go right in between. Make sure that we're laying our wire right flat on that plier, and we have an exit hole over here. Well, when we start, we can exit it if we want, but look how much wire that's wasting. So what I'll tend to do is I'll kind of make sure that I just clear that jaw. So in other words, I'm just making sure that I clear my wire on the other side of this jaw, which is going to clip my wire and make my loop for the first part of my component. So we'll just lay that there, and then I'm going to go ahead and squeeze that. And as I'm holding my plier, I'm going to kick this wire back. That's going to go ahead and center my loop on my wire, and I'll open it just a little and then go ahead and remove. That's what we have, a very simple loop. Now sometimes we need to grab our chain nose pliers and make sure that that loop is closed, which I usually reserve that until the end because, as I said, I go into assembly line. So in other words, I usually keep my tool in my hand and it goes a lot faster. And once I have fed my bead on, I have my loop facing away from me. Now it really does not matter if your loops are going the same direction, but I'm a little finicky, so I like to have all my loops facing the same direction. Now, if you have a design you're working on where you want all your loops to be facing the same way because it's part of your design, then just be mindful of that. So I have now put my wire in my tool, and this time I do need to make sure that wire is exiting outside of my one-step looper. I have my bead resting directly up against the jaw right here. I'm going to go ahead and hold that, and as I'm closing, I'm going to close slowly. Before I'm totally closing that jaw, I'm maintaining control here. I'm going to kick this bead back again, making sure as I continue to close that is straight. And then we will open and we will remove, and we still have some wire to make the next component. And that is what we have. And as you can see, does a pretty good job at most of the work getting those loops good for us. Now, I will say that the one-step looper did take me some time. I started using it last year, if you can believe. All the years I've been making jewelry, I did not start using the one-step looper until last year. All these years I've been making simple loops by hand, the good old-fashioned way, which I still do. But when I'm doing a lot of extensive loops in my project, this is a great tool also if you have carpal tunnel or issues, arthritis, whatever in your wrist. This is a great tool because it really helps with the fatigue. So it definitely helps me. So once again, I am going to go ahead and place my wire right inside that plier, just making sure that it clears the jaw on this right side here. I don't need to exit it on the first loop. I am wanting to make sure that my wire is flat up against the back of the tool here. And then we'll go ahead and we're going to close. And again, as I close, I'm going to kick that wire back and make sure that is centered. And then I will remove that out of my tool. And I will place my bead on my wire and see which way my loop is going. So I want the opening facing up away from me. just to be a little consistent about it. And then I'm going to go ahead, put that wire right in that tool. Let's make sure that it exits again. We're making sure that that wire is laying flat up against the back here. The wire's exiting here. And I am holding that bead right up against that jaw, but we're going to be careful to not crack the bead, so we don't want to hyperextend it there. So you just want to rest it against the jaw and just hold your bead and maintain control here. So once I close, I am going to be moving as I'm closing. See how that jaw is getting really close to touching that bead there, right? So I'm going to make sure that I'm maintaining control by kicking it back and then going ahead and totally closing the tool to complete the loop, and then I will open the tool and remove. And we have our component. So a one-step looper is really great for a beaded chain project. So we are done with that, and to construct, it's literally a matter of opening and closing your loops. And the only thing is, let's just make sure that our loops are closed. So I do like to work hard and close my loops as I'm going. So this one is open, so I will go ahead and just feed that right on. And then we're going to close. And when I'm closing my loop, we're going to rock that loop in. So basically, I'm working in this way. So when we're closing the loop, we want to rock it in. So we're making sure that that loop is closed, and then we can just press it and work hard that a little bit there. Okay? And we should be just fine. And then on the other side, I'm going to make sure I'm going to rock that. If I see it's open, and I'm going to rock that to the center, work hard that, press it down a little bit, make sure that that loop is closed, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my next bead, which is this one, and I already opened my loop, and I'm going to just add that on there. And again, I am going to grab my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to grab that loop, and I'm going to rock it in towards the center, so towards the left, as I rock that in to close that loop. And we'll press that and make sure that that loop is closed. So we are good and secure. We don't want any gaps in our loop. Make sure that that stays together. And then before I do the next one, I'll just make sure that this loop is closed, which it is, and then I will grab my next bead, and in this case it's a howlet, so I need to open my loop, so I'm just going to crank that loop open. And we don't need to open it that much, and then I'll go ahead and let's add that, and then we will take this loop, and again I'm going to grab it and work towards the center. I'm pushing towards the center as I am closing that loop, and then I'm going to work hard that a little bit right there. And so that's good to go. And now I need my next bead, which is, and you don't want to open and close your loops too much. It's another little tip and trick for you there, because it does weaken the wire. And so now we have this one up here. I'm going to make sure that that's closed, so I'm just rocking it in, making sure that loop's closed, and then I'll attach this last howlet. And again, I'm just going to crank that loop open, slide that on. So this is a really great beginner-friendly project to, again, really get your simple loops down, whether you're using your round nose or the one-step looper. Very beginner-friendly project, and if you don't have simple loops down before you start, you sure will after. And they're just lovely. I can attach everything to the simple loop on my last component on either side. Of course, you can, add another jump ring if you wanted to bridge the gap between this and your closure, but I don't want to add any more length. I wanted more beads, right? So there's lots of fun ways that you can get to your end result of a beaded chain. I also sometimes put jump rings in between. And sometimes I'll put multiple jump rings on the end for extender chain. You can do that as well. It's really just a design element. We just need to get the technique down, right? And then we can use any beads and have some fun. So long as we're getting the technique down, as well as using the proper gauge wire, is really what my pro tip is. That's my pro tip. So I just slid that lobster on there, and I am also going to go ahead and put my beautiful Venetian box chain on here. In fact, I'll put that on first, and then we'll do the clasp last. So I'm just going to add that link on right there, and then I will add my clasp, and then we'll go ahead and let's close that up. And again, when we're closing our jump rings, let's make sure that our pliers are always parallel and we are rocking them until they click and close perfectly as to not distort the shape of our jump rings. And so one side is already done. I have, now this particular chain is not soldered, so I could either cut it or open it. So I'll pull you in a little bit. If you have non-soldered chain, right, which this one is, you can reserve your chain by not cutting it. And so let's do that in this case. So looks to me like my beaded chain ends at about that link right there, but I could go one past if I wanted to. Just a bit of design element at this point. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and stick with this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this link right here, and then I'm gonna open it, and then I'm not gonna lose a link, so that helps to reserve my chain. So I'm just going to grab that link with a couple pair of pliers, and we'll crank it open a little bit. I'm gonna remove that link and put that back on the main piece of my chain and close that up. And now I have not lost a link of some nice stainless steel chain, that Venetian box chain. Oh, so good. So that's what I have. It's a little smaller, just by a hair, but you know what, that's okay, because we've got the jump ring, we should be fine. And now we'll just add the jump ring on this side, and we have a beautiful bracelet. And I do want to mention, guys, that this was a project in the making for many months, back to my February sparkle bag. I believe that was, I do believe it was February, the cloud collection. And I had made a necklace and earrings, which I want to bring up for you right now and show you. And now I have a full 3-piece set. I wanted to have a bracelet as well. So let me pull you out and I'll show you. So I've been wanting to complete this project for so long. So let's see what I have. I think that's perfect. And we have a beautiful beaded chain with a piece of Venetian box chain bracelet. I love it. It's so lightweight. This is great year round. I feel like this could be an everyday piece, frankly. Could wear that with a pair of jeans. I just love it. And I love the versatility of a beaded chain piece of jewelry because you can really personalize it. Again, once we get that technique down and we make sure we're using the right tools and the right craft wire, we're off to the races, and we have a beaded chain, a piece of beaded chain jewelry that will last for years to come. And again, do your tug test, right? If you're using 20 or 18 gauge wire, you're going to be just fine. But if you're using 22 gauge, you might want to wire wrap. You can also do beaded chain by wire wrapping everything. But I wanted to do something really beginner friendly, really just using a very basic skill of simple loops, and that's what we have. And so there's what the necklace had looked like, and just love it. I just absolutely love that. And then the earrings I had made, and I'll link the video if you're interested and didn't catch my beaded chain necklace and earrings. I will link them in the description box for you. And so that is my earrings that I had made. So I made a little head pin, so there's like a knotted head pin right there, did a wire wrap loop, and then a wire wrap loop on the top and the bottom of each component. And then what I just did was had some fun with the wire and pulled the wire back down on the outside. And so really beginner friendly piece of jewelry. It really, the whole set is truly beginner friendly, and that I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you in the next video. Keep sparkling and be blessed, my friends.